Jael joins us in just a few seconds. And I want to just, again, thank every single one of you. If you miss this show on any other shows, don't forget you can check it out on my website. That's jaeljoseph.com. You can also check it out on iTunes podcast, on my podcast on iTunes, where you'll be able to listen. You'll be able to see the show. But on my Facebook, on my website, you'll actually be able to see the show, and everywhere else that you subscribe to. You can actually see it on Listeners, Castbox, and iTunes. I also upload to YouTube, so if you want to see the video after, you can also subscribe to YouTube, or you can come back here later on and view the show. It always stays on my Facebook page. Jael is locked in. For she fast. Bon, Jael, she says Jael is listening from Bimshire. Where's Bimshire? Jael is locked in. Folks, I'm gonna get Uncle Val on. I just want to encourage you as well to make sure you like my Facebook page, not my profile page, but my Facebook page, because that's where the shows air originally. So everywhere else, it will be shared. So if you want to get in on the action right away, you need to make sure that you do so. You log in on my actual Facebook page. Yeah? So we're getting ready. I want to say a special, special good day and a special welcome to the man all the way from the Caribbean and representing. I want to say good afternoon, good evening to Uncle Val.
Hi, Jael. Thanks very much for having me on Cacoa Tea. You surprised me with that introduction. I didn't know you had all that in your thoughts. Yes.
Oh, I have plenty. There's more I could have said.
I realize. I only have a little bit of it, but you have more.
Okay, so thank you so very much for coming on, and I want to thank you for being a positive influence in the life of my sister, and for helping guide her, steer her in the right direction. So from my family, we really do appreciate you as an individual, as a mentor, as sort of like an obviously awesome father figure. So I want to say thank you to you.
Okay, my pleasure. It's an honor. And let me just say, I think with Jael and I, it's mutual. I also gain from her. I gain from her energy and her youthfulness and her insights into new things that are happening. So I think we support each other in that way. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm gonna get in the conversation right away, Uncle Val. Is it okay I call you Uncle Val?
Yes, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. I just want to make sure, all right. So I always start off my show asking, because I like to get to know who the person is behind this resume or the CV. And a lot of times, people tend to think we are a certain person when we're not. I think we had this discussion, and I really would like to get to know who you see yourself as and who you hope people to perceive you as, right? And I just want to know, who exactly is Val?
That's a very strong question, Jael. If I have to be honest, I'm still trying to find out the answer to that question, really. but I would say, in simple terms, I'm just an ordinary human trying to get the most happiness out of life, while at the same time not preventing anybody from achieving their happiness. So that's how I describe myself. But probably to go a little deeper, over the years, I have sort of come up with some core values that I try to live by, and I think those values define who I am. And the people who are close to me, they give me feedback when I'm missing the mark or if I'm hitting the mark. So and if you know me, you would have felt some way those core values that I don't know if you want me to share them at this point or.
Go ahead, but by all means.
Right. The first one, which is it sounds like a very common word, but and people put it here and there and everywhere. But one of them is integrity, if you can call that a value. So basically, I consider myself not having a price, so I cannot be bought. if I believe something is really wrong, there's no amount of money you can give me or nothing you can do for me to do it. And so I try to stay on that track. So that's one. And as a human being, sometimes you slip, but that is one that I hold fast. The
Mhm.
other one is innovation. I mean, from throughout my life, I'm always looking for some new, wonderful way to do things. I know a lot of people reminisce on the good old days, but I'm quite excited about what the world has to offer going forward. So I'm always looking for some new, fantastic way to do something, and I keep trying to encourage people to do that as well in anything I am. Another thing I do is continuous learning. I keep believing that I cannot know enough. So I am always looking to learn something new. So in my field, for example, I'm always forging ahead to see what's new, how can I do this, and what's new that I can learn, and I keep learning. And everybody around me, I try to make sure that they are also learning, because as and the fourth one is, and I don't know if you'd call that a value, but something like a social conscience. So I have a genuine desire to make the world a better place. That might sound very lofty, but I really feel, and I believe it starts with every interaction. So one of the things I set out to do is that everybody I interact with, no matter what level, no matter what gender, no matter who you are, my hope is that as a result of interacting with me, you will be better. You'll get to a better place. So that's who I am, Gerald.
Well, that is a lot of tea. I hope you bring your Cacoa tea for you to drink.
Indeed, I do.
Mm. So you have these values. When did you decide to develop these? Like, were these things that you started, you knew from the time you were a child, or were these things that you have developed throughout your lifetime?
That's a very good question. Um, so I about 2 years ago, because I interact with young people all the time, because I'm always trying to find out where their head is at, and why they behave the way they behave, what's missing, what they need. And 2 years ago, I was talking to this young man, and in the middle of the conversation, he asked me, "So, what are your values? What values you have?" And that question stumped me for a while. And I say, "I'll get back to you." Because
I would get
yeah,
back
yeah, yeah,
to you.
yeah, because so many things were swimming in my head, and then I went back and I thought about it, and I thought about it. I thought about how had lived my life so far. What are the things that are important to me, and so on. And then that's how I then crystal. So it's only 2 years ago I actually wrote it down, and but when I reflect, all my experiences and all the things that I've done kind of show that I espouse those four things. Yeah.
Wow, wow, that is actually that's good that you it's almost like you had to find yourself and find
Yeah,
what mattered to you
that's correct.
and
That's
what
correct.
you'd like to be known as. Because at the end of the day, when we die, we all want to know that people remember
They say
us.
nice things about us at the funeral.
Exactly, exactly. But you want to be remembered for doing positive, right? And you want
That's,
to
that's,
also in your lifetime you want to live it meaningfully. There's no need to live a life and like a bird on a tree and you don't know what tomorrow is gonna bring. So I'm glad to that just gives me a lot to think about even where I'm concerned, and I like that you brought this on because now I'm thinking like what are my four values, like
yes,
I want
yes,
I want to get.
yes,
I mean, I have you can have talents, you can have this, you can have. What are your values?
yes,
And I hope if people you are locking in right now and you're listening to this and you're probably thinking to yourself, you just heard what he said and think back. What are your values? What are really your values?
yes.
Talk about where were you born and raised?
Okay, so I was born in Curacao. My father is from Penville, de Grabalata, and but my mother is from Curacao. But when I was about 2 years old, I was adopted into a family. So a Bajan lady and a Dominican man, and then they came back to Dominica, and so I grew up in the village of Cottage. And in those days, it was a very remote village in terms of access. And so, there wasn't the coast road that we are very accustomed with now. So Rosa was a long way away. And as a matter of fact, we used to find it easier to go across to Basse Guadeloupe to shop and to sell our produce than to go to Roseau. It was an easier ride crossing the channel. So that tells you how far back that was. So
That
that
are you telling us your age now? You
Yeah,
spell your
well,
business.
yeah. Once I start calling these things, you can date me. You can put a date on me.
You
Yes,
put a
yes,
stamp on that date, boy.
yes. Oh yes, oh yes, yes, yes. So that's, yeah, that's what I grew up. I'm a country boy really, and the thing is, in those days, the secondary schools were only in Roseau. There were four of them, and they were all in Roseau. So that means that if you were from somewhere like Cottage, you had to come to Roseau and probably stay and go down on the weekends. Because you couldn't go back and forth every day. There wasn't that, the ease of transportation wasn't like it is now. So,
Wow.
but
So you lived in Roseau. You lived with family, friends. Like, who did you live with? Like,
well, in those days, because there were so many people doing it, there were always people boarding you. You understand? And the people in Roseau loved that, because then they would get yam and dasheen and so from the country, because our parents brought that down to make sure we ate properly.
wow.
Needless to, yeah, yeah, that was that was how that went. Yeah.
What does your name mean?
My name?
Yes, because you have a very your name
Okay.
spelled.
Okay. The official one, the official name, VERIEUX. I remember when I was at university, I went up for elections, university elections, and the people were asking my supporters, what that means. And my supporters said they researched it, and it's an old French word meaning truth. And I never argued with them. I never researched. I say I'm good with that. If it means truth, I'm good with that. But it came, my grandfather and great grandfather, they from the south of France. So and that name, that first name I have with a two R's, is a surname in the south of France. So I guess they must have just passed it on. Yeah.
They just
And
slap something on you.
it's quite unique. If you notice, I can just slap that on anywhere. I mean, my email address is very at whatever, and there's nobody else with that name. So I'm good.
Nobody else.
Right.
Ah,
Uh,
now you went to school in Roseau, and you lived
High
with.
school, high school, high
I
school. Yes, yes,
went to high school
yes.
in Roseau. You lived with people. What were your high school days like? What exactly can you say that was some of the most exciting things going on in your high school time?
Oh Lord, a lot of things. Well, I at school, the people who don't know me well would have thought that I was like a nerd, a fellow who always studying. But in truth and fact, the people who are very close to me know I like a lot of fun, and I'm not that kind of person. So on the one hand, I did a lot of things. So at my high school, I got involved in the newspaper, producing the newspaper, editing the newspaper. I did a lot of short story writing. I wrote there was a newspaper in Dominica called The Star. So I wrote stories for The Star. I have also had my stories read on DBS. As a teenager, I was in those days. I
You what you call
did
a box?
to that? Well, the thing is, right now, kids find it pretty cool to be smart. In those days, it wasn't the same. Once they point to you as smart, that means you were strange or eccentric in some way. But yes, I did that. I remember the former radio guy, Papa D, was interviewing me on DBS, and he said one of the questions he asked me, he said, "Listen, how is it that you at your age choose to sit down and write stories when other people your age they're doing this, that, the other?" And that was an interesting question. But it's not that I didn't do those things. It's for example, whenever I went back to Cottage, there were things I did there, which were different to what I did in Roseau. It was two completely different lives. So when I was in Cottage, I had a group of friends. What we would do, there were two main ones, and each of us would raid something from our mother's kitchen, and we'd go in the bush and cook some food, because I mean, I grew up, I don't know if you know this spot between the last house in Cottage and Clifton. So that all that land, that was like family land. So I grew up on that. So we could and there's sea, river, there's everything, and we
On
would
the
just
weekends you
go.
became a vacant.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. 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 Exactly. But in Roseau, of course, you don't have those options. So, of course, I was a decent young boy going to grammar school, that sort of thing. Yeah.
What would your friends say about you? Your friends.
Well. As I say, those who are not close to me will say, "Oh, this is a guy who always studied." I believe those who are close to me, They would say I like a lot of fun, and some of them would even say I'm crazy based on some of the things. Because and I tell you where that comes from, in the sense that if I feel like doing something, I will do it. And people sometimes think that people are like that must be crazy because sometimes I'll just do some arbitrary things. If I decide now to get up and go to some other part of the world, I'll just do it. And I have learned over time that not all humans behave like that.
You know what, Uncle Wal, you don't seem like the spontaneous type.
Well, exactly. That's what I tell you. The people who don't know me say, no, no, no. These are very studious. This guy is a priest. He's very studious, very careful, and so on. But the people, let me tell you, if you get the 4 or 5 people who know me very well, they would tell a completely different story.
Hmm. What was some of your? Because you mentioned that you liked short stories,
Mhm.
when you or writing short stories while you were at
Mhm.
school. Were there
Mhm.
any other subjects that you favored?
Okay, I got it into my head at an early age that I wanted to be a doctor. So of course, I pursued the sciences. So I loved biology, I loved chemistry, I loved physics, and in the end, I actually went to do chemistry at the university. I also liked Spanish and French. So I like languages and I liked the sciences. Of course, I always wondered that if I didn't have that thought about medicine in my head, whether I would have whether I would have pursued sciences at all,
Mm.
because I also like literature, so I like writing things. And I remember at when I was about 15, 16, 17, I thought I wanted to be an actor. And yes, I did. And guess why I changed my mind? There was this young lady that I was totally crazy about, and I shared that with her one day, and she just squashed me totally like a bug. I mean, she just said, "You want to be an actor in Dominica? Boy, you have no ambition."
Oh, yeah.
So listen, I forget that so fast. I forget that. but but truth be told, in all of my jobs, that's what I do. I perform. So yeah. So I was a classroom teacher for 10 years, and each class is a performance. Even though I do workshops, it's a performance. I'm not getting paid as a performer. I'm getting paid as a consultant or as a teacher or whatever. But I'm acting,
Well,
and
we're getting some feedback. Jarell especially, she says, you mad, Uncle Bo? Yeah. I don't know what that means.
I can imagine. No, no, Angela, I know exactly. She's probably thinking, "What a guy."
Well, I've heard a lot of stories about you, Uncle Bo. So,
Okay.
good stories, all good stories. But
Okay.
um, Jarell has you up there, really up there, highest,
Yes.
and
And
yeah. So she'll probably be messaging and commenting as the entire.
as we go along,
She'll
I
probably
appreciate that. I
continue.
appreciate that. Mhm.
Okay, so you said that you fell into sciences. You love the sciences. You wish you pursued literature. Was it important to you to actually pursue tertiary education? And when you decided to do so, where did you decide that you were gonna go?
Okay, so if we go back, so I wanted to be a doctor. So of course I researched, and in those days there wasn't internet, so you had to write, you write universities and find out what is it I need to do, and they would tell you, the subjects you need, how you need to do that, and so on. So then, well, the situation in Dominica, you have to try to get some kind of way, unless you are independently wealthy, to get to university is quite well. Even now, it's not easy, but in those days, you can imagine how much more difficult it was. So I applied for every scholarship that came, and I wasn't getting any scholarship relating to medicine also. So eventually I decided to take a scholarship they had in natural sciences, which was chemistry and biology, and with the intention that I'd use that as a sort of backdoor into medicine. And so that's how. And then I went to Kville. I went to UWI Kville, and that was a tremendous experience, going to Kville.
Why you
and
said?
and Well, I'll tell you why. And it's not so much the science that I learned, but it's learning, about our Caribbean identity and ourselves. So, for example, when I was at high school, I totally hated history. When I came to Cave Hill, part of the university's regulations demanded that even if you're doing science, no matter what you're doing, you have to do history of the Caribbean. And at the time, Sir Hilary Beckles he wasn't Sir at the time, but I think he was head of the history department. And he had some people working with him. And let me tell you, the kind of lectures and tutoring, um, they help us identify ourselves, first of all, as Black people. And then secondly, as, the whole African connection, and then as Caribbean people. And that I don't think I could have got that anywhere else I had gone. So to the extent that after I left Kville, I knew I didn't want to live anywhere else but in the Caribbean. I knew I wanted to give all that I had back to the Caribbean. So it's one of the things that happened to me, at university.
I think you and a lot of University of the West Indies students, past alumni, probably share the same vision or the same. They probably say the same thing because I find, and that's just me looking on the outside, looking in. I find everybody's so like patriotic. Everybody's like, we're staying in the Caribbean. We're not going anywhere.
It's
Everybody.
that thing when it hook you, you can't let it go.
You think well, is it something in the university? Something that they I guess they introduce such a rich culture, or they introduce you to so much of the Caribbean culture
Yeah,
that you are
yeah.
forced to fall in love with everything and say, why would I want to live anywhere else in the world? Why would I want to? Because I know Jael always talking about giving back and going back, and I'm just,
Yeah.
sometimes I think, God, sound like you have wings, go fly, and she's like, and
Yeah.
she's very much, okay, I wanna
Yeah.
be able to give back, which is why she studied
Yeah.
her Carrie Scholar or whatever. But I find
Mhm.
it's, and she's not the only one I've heard who've gone to
Mhm.
UE who feel that they need to give back. Anyways, we're talking too much about you. You're not paying for this. Let's continue. In what sort of activities? Because you've spoken about the educational part of your life. What sort of activities did you get become part of when you were growing up?
Oh well, the thing is, as youngsters, we used to lime a lot, and as I said, it wasn't easy like now. So I mean, I was in Roseau, but on a weekend, it's not after we've done chores and so, you could find us anywhere in the island. I mean, we would just hitch rides, yeah, from Roseau, and if we end up in Grand Fond, there's a village feast, or we end up in Saint Joseph, wherever we end up, and that was fun because remember we don't have transport, so we have no idea how we're getting back. So we hitch rides, going back, going back and forth. So that was nice. I did not get heavy in sports. I think after second form with my vision issues and so on, I said, boy, I got lazy and I didn't get in sports heavily in sports. But like and in those days they had the restrictions on young people were in terms of night, the time. Parents had some heavy restrictions about what time you could come in. So
You they ever give you
they
blows? Get blows?
say that again.
You ever got blows
Yeah,
growing up?
yeah. Oh well. The thing is, my adopted parents were interesting in the sense that they did not they did not beat. Like let me tell you how my adopted mother. She was a Bajan. The way which was fast. It fascinated me how she did it. She had almost like a formula. She had a recipe, which so they say the time must match the crime.
Mhm.
So if you do this, it's 3 lashes, and let me tell you, if you do that, it's six. And she will not give you one more than the allotted number, and she will tell you, yeah, yeah. Listen, it's very few parents have that kind of control. How do you, but it
I
was
think she was
so
trying to control
fascinating.
herself too, because if you get vexed, you can brutalize somebody, yeah, giving blows.
Yes, yes, but she does it very calmly. She never beat me when I was when I was when she was angry. It was always very calm. It was, hey, listen, this is what. Of course, after a certain age, the beating thing stopped. Where I think I got beaten was at primary school, boy. primary school. Good Lord. That was a favorite. That was a passion, I think, of these primary school teachers. They would, they had these whips, guava whips and
What
all of
sort of
that.
things you? What sort of trouble you'd get into that you deserve a whip?
Well, all kind of things. So as you well know, I have a lot of lapa walls. So I talk a lot. So I would get for talking, not paying attention. And the other thing was mental arithmetic. So they because they wanted you to be quick and you had to calculate these things in your head. And I'm the kind of fellow I want to sit back and reflect on it and work it out, and take my time and so on. But they're not into that because you have to give the answer when they ask you.
Like
And if you
this.
don't get the answer, it's whap, whap. So and in a way it was counterproductive because I remember a time in standard five or standard six that I, when they asked me the question, instead of trying, I just put my back, and I said, okay, well, they'll beat me and finish it out. I don't bother to try. So it didn't make me better, the blows didn't make me better, it's sort of thing. I just give it back. I say, okay, give it to me. I'll take it. So yeah, but so so basically it was those kind of things that I would get into trouble for. I also at high school I got into detention for practical jokes. I like to play tricks on people. No, it was very hard to catch me because as you can see I have a believable face, and so I'll do the thing. I'll do the wickedness and then try to slip by. But
What?
every now and then they would catch me, and I would pay for it. And even when they catch me, I try to talk my way out of it. I try to scheme my way out of not getting the punishment. So
So how you decide to you at University of the West Indies, and of course you tried your luck at the natural sciences. Can you tell us a little bit about your 4 years at university or your 3 years at university, whichever?
Whew, well, it was in Barbados. As I said, we had a good time, and more. I remember more about the other things I did than the natural science. But no, I did enjoy the natural sciences. So, for example, and one of the things I did at the university, which wasn't the thing then, I walk around to all the faculties and I did little things with all the faculties, which was frowned upon because in those days, if you're doing natural science, the people in natural sciences don't want you to go anywhere else. But I went across to the language thing and I did conversational Spanish, and I remember it was the ambassador of Spain. His wife was teaching that, so I formed that relationship. I went to law and I did law of torts, which I found very funny. And then eventually, when when I was scrambling in my final year looking for grades, I saw an easy course, because we have this status thing in natural science. We figure, once you can do natural science, you can do any of the other things, especially chemistry. Chemistry, people are kind of prima donna
They both
people.
Sakakashi, say that because you're
Exactly. We just believe that once we conquer chemistry, we can conquer anything. So I went over to the soci faculty, and I wanted to do cost and management accounting because I'd been a trainee accountant at Domlec, so I knew all the things here practically. And boy, I had a hassle with them. I mean, they told me I can follow the final year course, but I will have to sit the first year exam. Now that wouldn't help me at all because the first year courses don't contribute to the quality of your degree. I want the final year course, and and I battled and battled and battled, and eventually they allowed me to do it. And thankfully I was in the top five, because I just walked in there and did it. And of course I proved my point again that once you do chemistry, I mean anything is fair game.
Zato Bosta.
Yes,
Okay, so
but
so
but
you.
but so also the other thing I did, I got on the Guild of Graduates, and well, it's a student guild actually, not the Guild of
Mhm.
Graduates, student guild. So I went up. So David Thompson, who was Prime Minister of Barbados, he and I served on the guild together. He was legal counsel for the guild, and and I was NATSI rep. And in those days, and that was also fun because in those days it was one university, so it wasn't separated. Well, I think they separated and then came back together in another kind of system. But in those days, it was like one university and you had just the three campuses. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so if you are, I was not rep for KVille. So we had like I think 4 meetings a year, and then one would be in Jamaica, one would be in Trinidad. So I'm traveling on university money and having quite a lot of fun. Quite a lot
That's
of fun. Yeah,
very
yeah, yeah, yeah.
nice.
Yeah,
Why
yeah, go
did you
ahead.
decide to go into HR?
Why did I go into HR? Okay, so the story is, when I came back to Dominica, I with my degree in chemistry and biology, I went back into teaching because I had a bond to serve. And I kept applying for medicine. I kept applying for medicine and didn't get through. And but I usually plan out my life like decades in advance. So I basically decide, from an early age, this is where I want to be at that age. This is where I want to be at that age, and I have a plan A, plan B, plan C. And I had decided by a certain year, if I did not get into medicine, that would be it, because I have to get in,
To leave at the
uh,
same age.
specialize, and all of that, and retire by this age. So after a certain age, it doesn't make any sense.
Why was it so
So
difficult for you to get in?
say that again.
Why was it so difficult for you to get in?
Um, I think money, financial, because I couldn't afford. I mean, even to get to get into university, to get the scholarship, to accept the scholarship, um, I had to I had to get somebody to sign my bond. It was $72,000, and so I don't have property. My parents don't have property, or money in the bank of that amount. And listen, I was walking around Roseau looking for somebody, some good soul who would just sign, believe in me enough. Because if you don't come back, then they would off the person's money, or whatever. They would hold them
Wow.
accountable. So, and then I remember I was in JCs. I was a member of the JCs, and there was this gentleman who used to be at Tropical Printers, Anthony White, deceased.
Hmm.
And I said, boy, I have no option. Let me just go and ask this man. And I can never forget. I went in, and he said, no, man, I put my bets on you, and he just signed it. He just signed it.
Wow. What did that
And
do for you then? Like
yeah, say that again. I missed.
what did that do for you? I mean, somebody that that you had to walk around, and then one person says, "Yes, I'm gonna do it." How did you feel at that time?
Listen, no special. And I decided then and there that any young person that I can help in any way, I may not have money or whatever, like for instance, that's why if a young person asks me for a reference, I'll stop whatever I'm doing and I'll do it for them. Once it's somebody I know and so on, anything to push somebody ahead. And it's because I remember that, because I'm saying if he didn't do that, I probably would never have got through, and all the opportunities I got after that. Because you see, once you have a degree, in our countries, and you have drive and ambition, some doors open for you. They just start opening. And so that no, that was an amazing thing. And the way he just did that, and and I didn't know his circumstances. I didn't know whether he had or not. But I think he just decided I was somebody he was confident I would come back, and he was confident that I would get through the degree, and he was confident that I would serve my bond. So that helped my self esteem as well.
So you went into HR.
Okay, yeah, yeah, that's where, right, right, right. So let me come back to that.
Mhm.
So what happened? I came back, and I was teaching, and then the time passed when I had decided, boy, medicine is out of it for me. And then I sat down and I said, so how do I move on from here? And the way I did it was, I said, okay, so I've worked for 10 years. What are the skills I gathered? What are the things I have been interested in? And all how I calculated, the thing that gave me joy was helping people develop. And so I took a job, I left teaching and went to NDFD, and so there I started their training unit, many years ago, and that was an exciting job. No, that is where, at NDFD, because in those days, the NGO movement was very powerful. So they were connected across the Caribbean, and they had programs and they had funding, and so at NDFD, I was able to get develop. I was able to attend programs in adult learning,
Mm.
and the more I got into this, the more I got excited. The more I say, yes, I like this, I like this. Because even as a teacher, I prefer to teach children that I can reason with, So I always liked the older children, that we can argue, they can disagree with me, and that sort of thing. So that was NDF. And then what I did, and to anybody listening, in terms of, I know young people coming out and they say, well, we can't get a job, and they ask if you have experience, and how are you going to get experience if you don't get a job. Let me tell you what I did. I volunteered for every single thing. Let me tell you, I was volunteering on all kind of committees. On these committees, there were people who were being paid, and I was a volunteer, and I was working twice as hard as the people getting salary. And that is how people got to know me, because I was just in everything. And then when my first job out of Dominica, it was because of that volunteering. People had got to know me, and they know the quality of my work. And also they realize I'm a good guy to deal with. I am trustworthy, and, I will do what I say I'm going to do. And then what they actually invited me to apply for this job as UWI, and USAID. And that was in learning and development. So that's how I kept going. And while at UWI now, the nice thing working with UWI, once you're working there, you can go ahead and do your masters and whatever. So then that's how I got into the Sheffield University training and development master's degree program, masters in education. And with the way UWI used to work, I mean, maybe they still like that. For the staff, they give you study leave, they give you study grant. They really make sure that their staff can keep developing. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's how I moved up, and then job after job, I just end up going more and more into HR.
that is awesome. What were some of your, like, what were two of your favorite roles ever? Like two of the your most favorite
Ha!
places that you worked, or two of your favorite things.
Roles. You said roles. Once
Oh,
you
two
talk
of your
about
favorite
roles,
roles. Let's talk about roles first. Yes.
once you say roles, the role that I value more than anything else is being a father. I have three daughters, and let me tell you, there's nothing in life that I've enjoyed more. And I'm not claiming that I did it perfectly, but I just saying I enjoyed it. I enjoyed raising my three daughters, and also I'm so proud of them to see how they've become independent women. They've become very confident, and they become, and I always prayed that they would be good people. I never prayed for them to be rich or for them to be famous or anything like that. I just wanted, and I find they are good people. They have good hearts. So that's my favorite role. Of course, the other role that I really loved was high school teaching. That Yes, that gave me. I did that for 10 years, and that that's the job that has given me the most satisfaction in my whole life. And it keeps giving back, because almost every year I hear from or I meet someone I taught, who just say something, just express appreciation for me being there, for me guiding, and they would be very specific about it. So that, and many of them have gone much further than I have. I mean, I have quite a few students who now have PhDs, and they've reached very high positions, and I feel very proud, that I was part of their success. So those are my if you talk about roles. In terms of jobs, after I left UWI US Aid, I went to the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank,
A
and I
lot of
went. I
people,
went.
when I sent out the broadcast that you
Uh
were
huh.
going to be on, people who you've worked with at Eastern Caribbean Central Bank,
Central Bank. Uh huh.
they were messaging me. They're like, "Oh, that's good. That's good." People I had never spoken to ever, or don't even know existed, and I was like, "Okay, everybody, come
Yeah.
out!"
Yeah. No, no, it's no. I hold that place dear to my heart, and I'll tell you why. When so it Many people don't realize, but the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank was one of three multi-state, multi-country national central banks in the world. And the other two were in Africa, and the other two were not doing half of the things that ECCB was doing, because so the European Central Bank started long after ECCB, and they actually sent a team to ECCB to study how ECCB was able to manage eight ministers of finance, because that's the mind-boggling thing. In most central banks, you have one minister of finance who can just say print more money and it's done. With ECCB, you have eight of them, and they are in different kinds of microeconomies that not always facing the same adversity at the same time. So whereas one will want to go a particular way, the other one will say, "But nothing happening by me. I don't have any hurricane. Why you all want me to do this?" That sort of thing. So it was a fascinating place to work, and I think what made it even more fascinating is the gentleman who stayed there as head, Sir K. Dwight Venner, who's now deceased. One of the things he did, he set out in his mind that he was going to make that a sort of brain center for the Eastern Caribbean. So he collected the best minds. He wanted the best minds from all the countries. So I know you know about the Grenada Revolution. A lot of great minds came out of that, and some of them would have been ostracized because people have their feelings about what happened and what didn't happen and so on. And he provided a haven for these great minds. There were a few of them who joined, and he took them in, and he took people from all over. Let me tell you, it was an inspiring experience. In those early days, I went there in '95, and in those first few years, we would be, I mean, we would have management meetings, and that's one thing. But outside of the management meetings, we'd just be discussing the Caribbean, discussing, the way forward, ideas, and that sort of, because there are some very bright people, who just happen to be there. So the other thing he told me, so when I went with the masters and so on, and I started talking because in those days we had started looking at standards, VS 5742, ISO 9000, that sort of thing. And you know what he told me? He told me, listen, the things you're going to have to be doing here, nobody else has done them yet. So we have to blaze the trail, set our own
Set the
standards.
standards high.
But at first, listen, no, at first I'm saying, well, what am I talking about? But after I realized what you're saying, because some of the things I did there, I would not have got the chance to do them anywhere else. For example, performance management. At the time when I went to Central Bank, most companies in the Caribbean, except for one or two from outside of the region, they had a very archaic way of managing performance. And 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 we just decided at that time we're going to go ahead of the curve, and we're going to start measuring performance, like defining the performance before the performance period, making sure people agree on what the standards are, make sure the standards are measurable,
Mm.
and then do so. We set up a performance management system, which was new and different. I mean, right now a lot of companies have it and they take it for granted, but in 1995, there's very few Caribbean companies that had that, and we kind of pioneered, that. I remember fighting with the economists because the economists felt like chemistry people. They're also prima donnas. They they felt that their work was so special that nobody could write, could specify, measurable objectives for them and so on. So I had to fight with them. And right now, they just take it for granted. They now know that their thing is measurable. So that was one. The other thing we did, which was also new in the region, was an employee assistance program, and that was and you know how I know they were special. People who left ECCB while I was there and they went to international organizations. That is when they realized how far ahead we were. Because when they went to international organizations that were now trying to implement the things that we had got through in terms of HR and managing, and the ways we are doing it, the consultative way. One of the other things we did as well was like right now it's normal for people to have retreats and workshops and all of those kind of things within the organization. Back then it was only the NGO community that knew about those things or that embraced those things. And I remember one of the first things we did, and again with Sir Kate White, we brought the board members because usually a board sit down and it does this and that, and he said no, and I had made the board members draw and he say, listen, if I can draw, all of you can draw too. I make them draw. I make them do all kind of koshoni because one of the things we do in the Caribbean is that we intellectualize stuff. And once we intellectualize stuff, then it's my intellect against yours, and nothing real happening, right?
Very
So what I had to do with these bright people is disarm them with a lot of strange exercises, and sometimes I'll just start by saying, please trust me, work with me with this. It might not seem relevant, but I know where I'm going. I know how to, and eventually, they came to trust me. And the gratifying part was that so after I left, I don't think they may have gone a different way and so on. And
why did you
what was very pleasing to me was that when the new governor came in a couple of years ago, his senior managers told him, "Hey, listen, send for Morello. He can, this if you want to do that, send for him." And
why
actually
why
brought
did you leave
brought
when you left? Why did you leave?
he left. Okay, so
You giving us the tea?
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, I have to choose my words carefully. So here it is. So I had been there. I had been there for 10, 11 years, and the the world had changed. The organization had changed, and the organization had started becoming more, what call that, boy? They started standing more on ceremony. They started, and I understand why, because the shareholders, the countries were saying, IMF, World Bank, everybody was saying, this is what we need from you. This is what you need to do. Stop doing all these other wonderful things you're doing. You have to do central banking things. And I guess that was interpreted internally as putting everybody in a box. And I'm a small guy, but it's difficult to put me in a box. Uh,
You do what you
so
want. Just say that. No.
no, yeah, 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 exactly. Samuel. So I just break over the box and I go, because it was I no longer had the latitude to try all those wonderful experiments that I had before, and also I feel after you stay a certain amount of time in a role, you probably need to move,
Mm-hmm. Time to move.
because yeah, because you might believe you're doing wonderful things, but there might be somebody else, sitting there who have even brighter ideas, and their time has come and your time passed, that kind of thing. So I felt, and when I moved, a lot of people got opportunities. I think they had quite a few different heads, so they got to get the experience. So basically, if I'm in an organization and I cannot speak very confidently and know that I have the full support of the entire, the leadership of the organization, then I have only two options: either become the leadership or leave. You understand? Yeah. So usually, anytime I meet that and I cannot become the leadership, then I'm gone. Because
Sad.
again, because of my core values, I have to be true to myself. And if I cannot be true to myself, then I cannot stay. You understand? Yeah. But having said all of that, it was an amazing experience, and I think some of the people who went through ECCB probably not even aware of how special that experience was. It's only those who then go to international organizations they will realize, boy, you know. For example, if you take the same level of worker working at Central Bank of Barbados or Central Bank of Jamaica, or one of the other independent central banks, they don't have to face the same complexity that an ECCB worker has to face. So, for example, an economist at Central Bank of Barbados, she just has to contact one Ministry of Finance, and she has all her data and she has all her information. So, can you imagine that same economist in ECCB
Mm.
have to find information from Grenada, which is a separate government, a different administration, from Antigua, from so it introduces a level of complexity that would force your people to develop in ways that they wouldn't develop if they didn't have that level of complexity. So
Wow.
no, yeah. So no, it was a fascinating experience, that one.
Wow, we're getting some feedback here. Already saying good night.
Hey, hi Orel, hi. Haven't seen you in a long while.
Prince Prince is locked in somewhere in Europe, and he's saying the man who encouraged me to come here. Yes,
Wow.
yes.
Okay.
So he's actually, I think he's doing a degree of some sort um, uh,
Okay.
in in Europe, and
Very good. Very good.
you're one of the people who inspired him to get into what he is. He's doing right now. I want to talk a little bit about your writing because you mentioned earlier that you had a passion for literature and writing and short stories, and you actually decided to write a book. Why did you decide to write a book, and can you tell us a bit about it?
Okay. Okay. So let's go back to the short stories part. Uh, one of the reasons I stopped writing short stories is
Don't tell me it's
my
that good.
huh?
Don't tell me it's that
No.
that good. Like, for us.
No, not that one, not that one. No, what happened? What happened? What happened was that, so my stories would come out in the Star every Friday or Saturday, right? The Star
Mhm.
newspaper. And then I was in fifth form, and what they would do is that my friends would bring the story to the literature teacher, and they started analyzing my stories in literature class. And it's amazing because it was fascinating how, because you know how literature works. They're
Mhm.
trying to they're trying to figure out what was happening in my mind and what's happening in my life that I write that and so on. Listen, that thing scared me so much. I stopped writing. I just say no, no, no. That story thing, no, 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 no. Because again, at that time I was a very private person. I was saying, wait a minute. I didn't realize people could figure
Funny,
these things out from my writing. Right, right. So that phase went. What has happened over the last few years is that I've had the privilege of having so many experiences. I mean, in the Caribbean and outside of the Caribbean, that I feel somehow I have to try to start leaving back some of the things that I gained along the way. Because it's not mine. I got it and I have to kind of give it back. I was in Europe many years ago I went to a meeting, and a European gentleman who had done development work in the Caribbean. We were at the cocktail, and he said, the Caribbean has solved all of its problems already.
Mhm.
And I was like, what is this guy talking about? I said, what do you mean? And he said, I have visited your universities, I've visited your institutions, and the number of research papers I've seen there. You have researched all the possible problems you have, and you have come up with solutions for them.
So
It's
what's
just that
happening?
it's just that you're not implementing them. And I mean, that it made me feel a way. But the more I think about it, I say, boy, okay, maybe there's a reason why we're not doing this thing. And that's how I got into action learning, because with the process of action learning, you cannot keep meeting and not take action. So you have to act your way into learning.
Mm.
And as I do the action learning across the Caribbean, so I've done it with people from all countries of the Caribbean, and that's with the exception of, so let's leave out Bahamas, Cayman, and those. But let's say all the countries, the Eastern Caribbean, most of the Caribbean countries, so
Mhm.
including Suriname, Trinidad, Jamaica, and so on. And in those sessions, people are solving problems. Now, I have no control over whether they implement the solutions, but they're coming up with breakthrough solutions for the problems. And so I said now to do two things: to honor them, as well as to showcase this method as a way that we can reach solutions, jointly. I was going to write about it. So my book is really an account. So I describe the process, and as I describe the process, I'm going to fill it in with examples, of Trinidad, examples all over. So that's what I'm writing. So one of the things I learned, for example, is that the process incorporates the generations very well. So I had like four experiences where I had people my age and probably a little more senior than I am, and then I just bring in a very young person there. And at first, there's the usual, what's that person doing there? What right they have to be among us? They're not saying it, but you can feel it in the attitude, and it's
Mhm.
almost like when the person, the person afraid to open their mouth because they figure like, them old people there, they're not going to quite take me on and that sort of thing. But the process requires everyone to be equal, and I got some very good feedback from the younger people. They say, that's the only gathering of people, senior to them, where they felt respected. They felt that people listened, and then so I realized that part of our problem is that we don't listen to each other. So I'm really hoping that the process takes off. Um, we are. I put my. I jumped. I started Wild Caribbean World Institute for Action Learning
And
Caribbean in.
that's what I was about to get
We're
into.
gonna ask, right?
Um,
I
you
Go
jumped
ahead.
the ball on me,
Okay.
but
Go
tell
ahead.
me a little bit about that. Yes, tell me a little
Right,
bit.
right. So the World Institute for Action Learning, that was founded by Michael McQuart, Professor Michael McQuart, and we always joke that he's like third in line to Einstein, because Einstein mentored somebody called Reg Revans, and Reg Revans mentored Mike McQuart, and and so he developed this fascinating. I mean, he drew from other disciplines and from other work, and he created this method, which for problem solving, leadership development, organization development, that sort of thing, team building. And what he did is he formed an institute, which is the World Institute for Action Learning, which now has about close to 30 countries that include, so you have Brazil, Canada, China, Thailand, India, France, Poland, Russia, Vietnam, Cambodia, UK. So you have all these countries in it. So in 2015, I met him in 2006. So I did some early work with him in the Caribbean while I was at the central bank. That's another thing. I was able to bring him to the central bank as well, where we did some work. And so I was in on it even before he formed the institute. And then as the institute developed, he kept urging me. He said, no, 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 you need to start a Caribbean affiliate. You need to start a And so in 2015, I started the Caribbean affiliate. And not only did I start it, but I jumped up at the conference and chose 2021 as a year in which Wild Caribbean will host the international conference. Now, let me tell you, I do that without knowing, and
Wow.
and that's why sometimes I get worried when we start talking about things, because I find sometimes when our people talk about things, the first thing they say, "Oh, we don't have resources, or we don't have money." No, no, no. You have to have the will. So once you decide you're going to do something, let me tell you, if you are committed to doing it, somehow the resources will pull itself together. And so I say I'm going to do it. So, and 2021 is not very far. So we're going to do that. Now, so I don't know if I can explain action learning, but it's
Yes,
really
yes.
like
I
right.
want you to tell us
So
what it is
a
about.
little more about it, right? So it's a small team. You're having a small team working on real problems, taking action, and they learn while doing so. So we usually don't have more than 8 people in the group, right? So and let me give you some examples of where I use it. Well, even at the central bank, one of the things we did, we I was working with the managers there, 38 of the managers, and what we did, we said, okay, you have a new strategic plan for your organization. Pick out a problem that you own in that strategic plan, based on your area of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I did, I got the HR people to pick a random group of staff, no
Oh,
matter what level, what discipline, just a random group of staff, no more than 5 or 6. And so for each manager, they sat down with this random group of staff, and I coached the group. Now, the way the thing works is that you can only speak in that session if you are asking a question or if you're answering a question. So people like me, if a lot of lap wall, that's a very difficult thing to do.
wow.
But what it does, it's brilliant for Caribbean people, because Caribbean people pride themselves on being eloquent. As a matter of fact, once somebody can speak eloquently, we figure they're smart and they can do things. And
Mm-hmm.
we forget that the two things don't go together. There are a lot of people who are very eloquent, but they can't do squat. So so if somebody starts speaking, and they're not asking a question, I would ask, well, what question are you answering? And they say, well, I don't know. I say, okay, so do you have a question? And so they must ask a question, because what we have found is that questions define the unknown much better than statements. And as a matter of fact, we also say that when you make statements as a leader, you get three kind of reactions, and I call them the 3 Ds. You either get defiance, defensiveness, or the last one slips me now. But so if you make a statement, people are like, they try to defend themselves,
Yes.
or they like get defiant, in the sense like, who you think you are to tell me all of that? And that's even if they don't say it, but that's what's going on in their head. So you're not getting any benefit from that. And of course, the third one is dependence. If you are leading people, or if you're in a group and you always have the answer, people will stop thinking. Why bother think? If
For me.
Jael going to answer it anyway. So I just sit down. I say, Jael, what is the answer again? You know what we must do. So you have managers leading. They have 35 people with them, and they're doing all the thinking. They're doing all the figuring, and the 35 people just taking a free ride, because they have not honored these people's contributions, and they have not invited them. They have not asked them questions. And in our century, it is even more important because 50 or 100 years ago, if you got to the position of manager, chances are you knew more than the people around you. It's
Hmm.
not like that anymore. I walk into organizations, and the youngster who just come from high school know a lot of things that those people at their 20 years have no clue about.
That is so true.
So
That is
so
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 very
so-
true.
right. So the new way of doing business is that as manager, as you know, if you also have a leadership role, you cannot abdicate your responsibility. So your neck is on the block, but you have to admit you don't have all the answers, and you have to bring the other voices to the table. And I look around at the Caribbean all the time. There are a lot of crises that we have, and I say, okay. So another example. Every country I go to,
When you say that,
um,
it just sounds to
right?
me like it's all about building a team and letting them come with you. So you're not really you're not really saying do this, do this, do this in terms of the micromanaging aspect
Yes,
of it. Everybody comes
yes,
on the journey with you because everybody has an equal input, or at least they feel like they have an equal input because it's a team, right? That's what a team is supposed
yes,
to.
yes. Yes, no,
Wow.
indeed, and sometimes our ego get in the way. So the last workshop I had, one of the difficult things people had, and they were like, so really, so I say, listen to me. If you ask your team for suggestions, and somebody comes up with a brilliant suggestion that you had thought of before, forget that you thought about it. And they say, really, should I say? Because they cannot resist the urge of saying, yeah, but I thought about that. No, just say thank you, Jane. That's a brilliant idea. How do you see yourself, working with us to get that done? And let me tell you,
Yes.
Jane believe it's her idea. Man, Jane going on sleepless nights, Jane going to research on the internet, she going to call friends,
Yes. And
and
then
all stuff.
you have this employee that was probably like chillaxing, and now they
Yeah.
feel
No, alive, alive and well. Yes, yes. But
alive now. Yes.
sometimes we let the ego get in the way. They say it's two things that can let you crash as a leader: is ego or stupidity. So it's one of the two. So usually ego, gets in the way.
Now, Uncle
Yeah,
Bob,
I don't know where I am now with the question.
when you in comparison to how you grew up, do you think that there are any deficiencies that hinder personal development right now? Like,
That's a good one. One of the things that made me who I became, is that I had a certain amount of freedom. So although we had restrictions, there's some fears we didn't have. So I could relate to people. I mean, I could go and spend the whole day by the sea. I could do, and one of the things now I find is that parents, especially in the urban and suburban areas, they're so scared, and I guess maybe they have good reason too because of everything else that's happening. Um, but their children are not given that level of freedom to interact and develop the social skills. So I guess they use social media, but that's a different thing. That as a human you have to get real. So I think that more than anything is a bit of a stumbling block.
so would you say you're
The
lacking in the human interaction?
Yes, no, definitely, because let me tell you, with us, there's some things, and I say maybe we were naive because there's some things I hear about now. I mean, I had no clue, and I say, boy, if I knew those things existed, probably I wouldn't do a lot of the things I did. But we interacted. I mean, I got and people, I found people were they they felt that they could guide you. Like right now, people are afraid to talk to people children because they figure, boy, one way or the other, I'm going to get in trouble, or da. So I think that is one of the difficulties. The other thing that I think we've left. You see, as I define the core values, um, those didn't just drop out of the sky. I believe I came by those things because of all I hear all the proverbs, the granny, mommy, everybody was preaching those things all the time. Everywhere you go, the teachers, they had these nuggets of wisdom that they would fire at you, and we kind of internalize them and then develop. So for example, I was I found it a little strange a few years ago when they had a couple years ago when they had the U.S. election, and I had some young folks talking, and I talk about value system, and I was amazed. And these were educated children. I mean, they had gone to state college, and they didn't get what I was talking about in terms of core values. They didn't get, because even if I had not defined mine, but I also knew about having a sound ethical compass and a set of, a core that would stay there. And I have since then, between 2016 and now, I keep asking my peers, how did we come by those things? Because those are the things. So for example, my close group of friends. I mean, you can never put both of your hands in fire for people, but I can put one whole hand in fire for them and about certain things. Like I said, they would not do that, or they
Wow,
wouldn't do this, or they
so
wouldn't
and
do
so
that,
would not do that.
because it's a set of core values. And I find that sometimes I find that we didn't provide that opportunity for people to develop that. Now, having said that, I was bludgeoning like that among some young people at university, and they straightened me out. And I remember one in particular from Dominica. She said, "Hey, listen, you got it wrong, Uncle Vo. You judging the generation, unfairly." And since then, she would send me examples of things that her peers are doing in the different countries. That reflect, song values, social conscience, and all of that. So even as I said what I just said, I am refining it and saying not all. There is a pocket of people who still getting the right stuff. It's how we support them and make sure they lead rather than the others.
Now, you brought up something that I wanted to get into. You mentioned a little bit of social media, but before I do, I want to encourage the viewers. If you have any questions for Uncle Val, now is the time to do. Now is the time to ask your question, so that I can pull them up and then determine which ones will go first and whatever. And not don't wait towards the end to ask your questions. So if you have any questions, go ahead and shoot, and we can get this going. Now, you mentioned the whole social aspect of things, and I'm forced to delve into social media a bit because now social media is what rules the world as far as as far as communicating, interacting is concerned nowadays. Social media plays a major role. Now, how do you feel social media has affected, or what effect do you think that it has had on the world? On when I say on the world, in terms of to persuade positive change.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to be honest, I can't imagine how we live without it. So, but it has changed how we socialize. Huh? So I would say the thing maybe, so one of the things, so because of its newness, the novelty, well, it's not new anymore, but to some people it's still new. People abuse and they misuse it, like humans misuse a lot of things. I'll give you one little example. There's this young lady again who felt that I had been kind of guided her. I didn't know that until she said so. And she was at university. She did law, and so I visited her country and I went to church, and her mother, who I also know, um, was at church, and she was at church, and she was so excited to see me, and she's trying to get her mother to come and say hello, and her mother say, "Oh, no, no, I'll see him on Facebook. Yeah, I'll talk to him on Facebook." You understand? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I say, okay, all right, that's fine. You understand? So no, no, that was like,
It's like,
okay.
catch you on Facebook. Yeah. See you later.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I see, so I say, boy, okay, so that's how we're doing this thing now. Because you know the research has shown that humans need to make that face-to-face person. There's something we see in other person's face, and it's not even the same. Like me looking at you here on, is not the same as me being in the same room with you. And I don't know if it's the
You,
smells,
you
the
cannot you
chemistry,
cannot you cannot capture my aura from this community. That's what it is. Right?
you got it, you got it,
But
you got it, you got it,
but
you got
face
it,
to
you got it.
face, when we're there with each other, you can capture everything. You know how
Yeah,
because I could
Yeah.
be talking to you right now and doing a million and one things, and you would not
This
know,
is true.
right?
This is true.
I could
This
be
is true.
chatting with
Yeah.
my chick on the side. I could be,
Yeah.
texting
Yeah.
somebody. I could be sending out emails. There's so many things I
Yeah.
could be doing right now while I'm speaking with you, and you would not
Yeah.
know because you're only
Yeah.
connected with this part of
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
and there's no way to get exactly how I feel.
The full experience. Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
No. No. True. True.
Yeah.
But the so in terms of the good, listen, in all societies, I mean, in all societies around the world, but in the Caribbean, because of our history, there are a lot of people who are hurting. There are a lot of people who don't feel respected, who don't feel wanted, who don't feel, self-esteem. And in a way, social media does good and bad for that. So some people get noticed who would not have been noticed before. They have a platform where they can communicate and they can build their self-esteem. The other thing is where people can get, and I mean, it can get brutal sometimes, but sometimes people get feedback, so you can develop. What I like as well is that so there was a time, for example, when I would go and do my workshops, and yeah, I feel okay. I come in with brilliant stuff here. These days, when I go to do a workshop and I want to show a small video clip, I ask people if they see it before because I know, and I also tell them that I know today is the first day, but I know if you want, by tomorrow morning, you will know just as much as I do on the subject because I know they can just go online and they can just ask anybody, anywhere in the world, has anybody done that? And they can get it done. So I think that way, the way it has the power to bring us together in the same way that it can do awful things, but it has a power to bring us together so that we can almost speak with one voice. I'm looking forward to the next 10 or 20 years where almost like a whole country can just speak one time. Yeah, because that's where we're going. Like you can almost speak to the whole country, and the whole country can speak back one time. And I'm thinking seriously that we have to redefine what we mean by country because we may be able to have a virtual country. You understand? Like for example, if one of our countries, and I hope it doesn't happen, but if one of our countries is threat of disappearing, what's to stop 10 or 20,000 people from that country going somewhere and continue the country? You understand? Continue country in a virtual way. So I'm totally fascinated about where social media is going, and of course I'm always like a step or two behind because every time I think I up with it, somebody, Jael, somebody else will say, "Hey, but you don't know about this. You haven't done this. You haven't done this. Oh, that's old." When I believe I onto
You know
something new,
what?
they say, "No, no, that's gone. That's past already. Here's what's on now."
It's funny you say that
So
because everybody's interaction or everybody's um time spent on social media is so different than
mhm.
yours. Like you might have
Yeah.
your own interests and you decide what you want to
Yes.
get to know about. A couple days ago, I had a tutorial with one of my professors because I missed out. I missed a class, so I
Class. Yeah.
requested to have a tutorial session where I could review what was taught in the class. And towards the end of the tutorial, I was speaking with her and I was telling her certain things that I do, right? And just showing her certain apps that I use. And she's like, "What do you use that for?" And I'm like telling her, and she's like, "Oh my gosh!" She's like, "You should teach a class on that, right? Because I have all of these apps that are there to make my life easier."
Easier.
And
Yeah.
like I introduced her to, for example, the Genius Scan, which is an app that I have because what I found every time I had to send a document to somebody and I didn't have a scan, I was always scrambling around. So it's something that I downloaded and put it on my iPhone. I can scan the document as is, and it's transmitted via email in seconds, right? So
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
she's like, she's going on her phone and she's downloading it. She's like, give me another one. And she was like, she just wants it. She wanted
Yeah.
all my apps, and
Yeah.
she's saying, how did you? But it's funny. I speak to a lot of people,
Yeah.
and every time somebody tells me about something, like I have this friend Ricardo, who I call like the genius of everything. Like he knows everything.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
he He introduced me to an app that allows me to scan all my receipts. So I don't have to keep any damn receipts. So I just scan the receipt as soon as I get the receipt and I tell him to keep it. I don't need it. And it files it for me. It seeks it. It tells me. It sorts it. And I just download
Mhm.
the Excel version of it at the end of the month. And I have all my receipts like that, And I don't have to do any
Right,
accounting
right,
and whatever. And
yeah,
it's just getting information from all these people. You can learn so much. There's so much to learn. But what I've found with social media, a lot of people don't understand how detrimental things can become
yeah,
on not when you use on the improper use of
yeah,
social media.
yeah,
Like I remember bringing up to you that somebody said to me once, "Oh, your whole life on social media," and I'm like, "How do you know my whole life is on social media? Like what do you know? What have you? What since you've been following me? What exactly do you know about me? Like just tell me some things you know about me." And
mhm,
she could not come up with much that was
right,
obvious. Like when I say obvious, things that anybody else could
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So what do you think? How do you think as an employee or somebody
Mhm,
wanting to get a job? How do you
mhm.
think should we be more aware of what we post on social media and what are the repercussions of just using social media freely because we all want to be free spirits and speak our minds.
Yes. No, 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 no. But yeah, you're correct. And maybe my daughters have secret accounts, right? But the account that I have access to, they know if I see something that's out of line with all the thing that I'll say something. So maybe to be soft on daddy, they probably don't. I mean, I'm not saying they must be, totally restrained, but they have to stay within the boundaries of good taste and their values as well, their value system. So one of the first things I do as a recruiter is, well, and this is over the last few years. Every name that comes in, do an extensive search on all the media,
What
and
you
if the person lives in the US, it's even worse because in the US I can find out where the places they live, whether they had any arrests, whether they had, because everything is there. If you know how to look for it, so I look for that. I look for if the media, if the normal media, print media and radio, if they mention them in any way and what they mention them about, who they relate with, that sort of thing. And you'll be surprised how many people we drop off from lists who who have unsavory part. Because I mean, you don't just use what comes up there. But once something comes up as a red flag, you follow it through and you ask people, who because it will tell you the year, it will tell you, give you an idea who was involved, so you know who you can ask about this. So that's one. Obviously, if I go on your page and I see something that is totally, against the organization's values or in poor taste, um, you're out. You're out. People have argued with me. They say, well, somebody can make a mistake and so on and so on, but it depends on the kind of mistake. So people should be very careful. I know people. I have had young people say, "Oh, but that you all shouldn't be checking that. That's my personal this and that and that." I say, "But hey, that's your life. That's your public life. So it's as much as the conversation you have in the bar or wherever you're putting it. Now all of us can see it. So it's going to affect because what you want is in your organization as far as possible. You want to have employees who match up to your values. The values that the organization says it matches up to. Now, if your customers can just Google your employees and see that they're totally against, what you stand for, that doesn't do well for you as an organization. So therefore, we would not hire you. Now, the other side of this is that on two panels I've been in over the last 2 or 3 years, where we were recruiting for a high level position. The panel also made the decision that if that person doesn't have a sound
social
cyber
media
footprint,
presence?
social media footprint, right, right. If they
Yeah.
don't have that, then they're not fit for that job because they're saying in this century, You
Damn.
cannot lead an organization if you're not out there. If you have and so, for example, if you want to lead an organization and we're hiring for that position, there must be somewhere that we saw you say something relevant to what that business is. If it's legal, if it's economics or whatever, you must have written something, or you must have said something, or you must have published. You have to have something out there, something that says this is who you are. Because remember, you're coming to the organization and you bring in your profile with you. And what we want is for your profile to enhance the organization, not pull it down. You understand? So
Mm.
so it's there are pros and cons. I think some people have learned over time. I've had to beat up on young people, and they argue with me, they didn't take me on. And then quietly I noticed that, they realize, okay, wait a minute, oh, we have to, yeah. And I see them, mellowing out their presentation. Even very senior people. I mean, a very senior person, professional, I saw them posting something. Well, they were posting two kind of things. Well, and they were not things that were in poor taste. But this person is in a profession that is respected uh, for truth and the right and the this and the that.
Mhm.
And they shared a post that was obviously fake. So I challenged them and I said, but well, I could expect that from somebody else, not in your position. But remember, in your position, unfortunately,
Wow.
you don't have the option for people not to think of you as that.
So you always
So
have
you
to
have
be
to,
watching what you post, no matter
yeah,
what.
exactly, exactly,
that is
exactly.
that is so crazy. We're getting some questions here, and I want to get
Question?
to them.
Okay, sure, sure.
We
Hmm.
have Dale Pross. I'm guessing is asking, what are three top soft skills you'd recommend for every employee or person, regardless of the industry?
Wow.
So
Yes.
besides having a good social media presence?
Yes. So yeah, good social media presence for sure. But listening is very, very important. Some people listen so they can respond. You have to have the ability to listen to understand, because in listening, you when you listen, it connects you with the other people in the organization in a way that they realize, hey, wait a minute, you have respect for them, you have regard for them. They're more likely to work well with you. So listening for sure. As an action learning coach, I also say asking the right questions, not interrogation kind of questions, but being able to ask the right questions, because you build better rapport with people by asking questions. And I know the stigma sometimes in the Caribbean, because many of us fight so hard to get the education that we have, and we sometimes feel, if we ask questions, people will think we're stupid and so on. But there's a skill in asking questions of people up, down, across from you, that help you build rapport with them, and also help to enlighten you. So that whole communication thing, it's I broke it down, but those are aspects of communication. So the asking, the listening. um what what would I say other than that? Your interpersonal relations have to be like what I tell people. You have to develop the skill to manage your body language. And let me see what I mean by that. Like, your body doesn't lie. So you're something going on in your head, but your body says something else. Now,
Mhm.
to be the ideal employee, you have to be able to manage that. So, for example, if I'm working with a close team, you don't come in my team and roll your eyes. I will stop and ask you, what's that about? Yeah, yeah, you don't do that. No, you don't do that. So it's that it's emotional intelligence, and right now we even stop talking about emotional intelligence, but emotional capability. So your ability to control your impulse. So yes, I'm angry. Yes, I want to
That's
blow up.
so
Yes,
very
I
important
want to
for all
explode.
of us.
But in my professional capacity, this is how I'll handle it. Okay. Later on, I'll go in the basement and punch the door or something like that. But in dealing with the person, this is how we will do it. So that emotional, and I know, Dale, you mentioned skills. So even emotional capability encompasses a large number of skills. But if you get what I'm saying, that ability to be angry and not, and not do the wrong things, that takes away from your team, takes away from the organization. That ability to control the impulse, and of course the communication, the asking and listening. I'm sure there are others that don't come to mind now, but I think those more than anything are important. I don't know if you call respect a skill, but you can show respect by the way you listen, by the way you ask, by your emotional capability as well.
I hope that answers
More
your
questions?
question, Dale, who just asked, wanted to know about
Yeah.
that. Um, what happens next for Uncle Val?
Ha! Ideally, what I would like to do, I need to get this book. I've been promising this book for so long. I really would like it to be out no later than the middle of this year for sure. Once that is done, what I want to do really is to write a few more books. So I want to be able to go and sit down by the bay and just write some books, write some stories, and so on. And once I can feed and clothe and house myself, I would be very interested in doing voluntary work to build community, to improve interactions between people within groups, to build groups, build teams. I can do that for free once I'm sure I can eat and I can drink, that sort of thing. So I'm really hoping to be able to write, and in writing, so the book I'm writing is not fiction, this one, but going forward, I want to also write some fictional pieces with messages in them. Um, so one, for example, I'm thinking of. I'm fascinated about what happens in barber shops. I think I'm not sure all women understand what happens in a barber
I
shop.
understand. Listen,
You do? Okay,
I'm
okay.
getting my hair cut in a barber shop. Let me tell you,
Also, you know the inside story.
your
All
barber
right.
shop can become so lit. Eh? You can know.
Yes.
I think men pong more Beth than women.
It's not Beth, it's education.
Oh,
Leave that
Beth.
alone. It's not Beth, it's education. Listen to me. A barber shop is such an alive place, it's not funny. And it doesn't matter where it is. So I'm looking at a barber shop in Dominica, and I'm also looking at one in Maryland. And what I want to do is write a story that captures those two, that captures how people go into those barbershops on a regular basis, how they develop, the kind of things they talk about, their life experiences, and how that goes back to the barbershop and how it connects, and how the barbershop helps to build community and helps to provide a sort of mentoring environment for men, because you have men of all ages in there and you're learning stuff. I mean, you're learning things. I mean, that's where I learn about cars, I learn about the
And people business.
ladies there and so on. It's not really people business. You learn about things to do, things not to do, and you get ideas as well. In Dominica, for example, at the barber shop, I remember getting a serious education about the conservation effort for turtles, because one of the patrons of the barber shop, I mean, he happens to work with forestry, and he's very, very committed to making sure that nobody violates, this thing, the turtles and so on. And he gets personally upset. And then, and some people had the opposite view, that, well, we have to eat the turtles and so on. And hearing him calmly explain, why it is we must do that and connecting the dots, that's an education. And that's just one of the many things. So it's not just Beth, Jill.
So book to come out soon. Of course, you continue doing your trainings and your
Yes, yes.
through the World Institute
Right.
for Action Learning. Where, of course, if you want to find out a little bit more about Uncle Val, all his handles, depends on what device you're looking at the show, is provided either above or below in the screen. So you can find him on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram and Facebook too, right?
Instagram, yeah. Instagram and Facebook. Yeah.
Everywhere, yeah, he has a social
Thanks to the
media,
young people in my life. Yeah. Yes.
right? And you can always, if you have any questions, you want to reach out, or if you want to ask questions even after the show. Some people sometimes go back and
Mhm.
ask questions on the videos, and hopefully Uncle Val will be able to come back and respond to some of your questions. And if you do ask questions, tag him so he can see that you've asked a question, and he can always come back, because not every
Right.
time
Yeah.
we see the video, questions, and people don't really understand. We think that you just don't want to answer their question, but it's just because we didn't
We
see
didn't
it.
see it.
There's so many other messages coming in, and sometimes we miss certain things. But Uncle Val, it was such a pleasure having you here on the show with me. I feel you provide so much information that you can give to young people, and I feel that every young person should have an Uncle Val, because you help, you can guide, you can offer guidance, and you like Joel says, you use fire. you know, fire. And you're very relatable, and I think that is what a lot of the more mature people, or the older people, can sort of be very much, sausage and moon. They kind of like put you in a box, and they say, oh,
Put up a
sausage
block.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
kind of push you to the side. You're young people,
Yeah.
but anybody of any age can relate to you, and that is not very many people possess that anybody can have a conversation with you
Thank
and
you.
be able to carry on the conversation. And some people are saying they're gonna look you up right away, like they're commenting underneath saying that they're gonna look you up and stuff. But I look forward to when your book comes out. I think a lot of Caribbean people can learn from your book, and what you have to offer. And I wish you all the best. I mean, I know you're waiting for to see how social media changes in the next 10, 15 years.
Yes. Yeah.
I,
Excited about it.
I'm just waiting for something that can cook for me. That's all I'm waiting for. I'm just waiting for that device, that app that you can
It's
say
coming.
cook for me.
It's coming. It's coming. It's coming.
I remember years ago when I was on radio, I said I'm waiting for an app that no, I'm waiting to see cars fly. And
Yes. Yes.
they just recently launched.
Yes.
So you see? And
It's
it
coming.
has
It's
my
coming.
lifetime. So you never know what's gonna happen, right? I'm just waiting for that
Yes.
app that can teach us how to cook, or not teach us how to cook, but cook for me. I
Do
want
it. Cook
to,
it. Yes. Yes.
it's an app. I just
I,
put tap,
I,
tap, 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 and
Well,
I
well, maybe
there.
maybe not an up there, but what I'm thinking of is that you may have something. So you have these automatic cars. So you online, you get all the groceries and so, and the groceries come by menu. They come in and there's a chute at the thing there. It loads them in the chute, and you have something called an auto chef.
And I
And you
just,
go to the auto chef and you say scrambled eggs, coffee, and whatever, and it just does everything. So you never have to touch the thing,
oh,
because it disposes of the garbage itself. I'm
oh,
right there. I'm living there already.
well, thank you so
Yeah.
very much for taking time out of your schedule to talk with me. I really do appreciate it, and I really do appreciate every single one of you who came on. And I want to encourage you, if you have not hit share on the button, you need to do so. Hit share, because I feel somebody else can benefit from the information. And in the meantime, I'm gonna take a little drive and think about my values. You know,
All right. Good. Good. Thanks very
what
much, Jael. Thank you.
what are my core values? That's a lot. That's some heavy shit, right? What are my core values? I'm thankful again for being on the show, and thanks to every single one of you who tuned in. Thank you, Uncle Bob.
Thanks. Thanks. You too. Bye bye.
Take care.